What country's capital is growing the fastest?
Fuck. I'm great with geography, too. What?
Ireland. Every day it's Dublin. Folks, welcome back to Brand Coverage. I'm Brandon Carney alongside Pat Gustafson. And Pat, it happened. We are free. And all I have to say is...
Is this song out of the copyright range? Oh, here we go.
Fly, Eagles, fly, on the road to victory.
Probably not. We're probably going to get copyright strike. But then again, I don't know. The picture on that YouTube video was black and white, so it might be in whatever past the statute of limitations on that. I have no idea.
I'm glad you went with the original on that that first one there. That's a way better than I don't even remember who made the modern one that I don't quite care for.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm hoping that song is just not copyrighted anymore. If it is, sorry to those folks.
I think it came around in like the 60s, so there's a chance.
Yeah, sorry to the folks viewing this after the fact that portion of the video might be muted, or this just gets demonetized in general. But either way, nothing can ruin my day,
we're getting
Pat.
paid for this?
I mean, pennies. Nothing can ruin my day, Pat. The Kansas City Chiefs have been taken down. We finally had justice in the Super Bowl. I felt like I was taking crazy pills all year watching this fucking team barely eke out these wins, but we finally got not only them losing, but them getting their asses pounded into the dirt.
I was about to say, it wasn't even justice. This was like vigilante justice, where they're just beating the living fuck out of someone, even though they have no right to do so, and are going to get away with it. It was like some prison shit going on there.
It was, as many have said, the most successful hate watch in a long time. There were a lot of haters.
Without question.
Myself included, watching this game, and not only did we get vindicated by the end result, we got vindicated the entire way through, Pat. It really wasn't competitive. So in today's show, guys, we are going to break down, obviously, the Super Bowl. That very well may take up the entire show. As Pat and I were trying to plan for what topics to talk about other than the Super Bowl, I looked back at last year's show at post-Super Bowl and realized we just talked about the game for like an hour because it was that there was that much to talk about. We really didn't need to fill it with much else. But assuming we do get through talking about the game and we move on from that, we'll also be talking about a couple other headlines. Obviously, the New Orleans Saints have a new head coach. The Jets made a particular maneuver regarding their quarterbacking future next season. Huge news dump. And then
Super Bowl Day news dump.
Exactly. And then we'll run through a couple of important offseason dates just to get you guys prepped for the offseason that is to come. Talk about a couple offseason storylines and some relevant free agents. But first things first, Pat, we've got the Super Bowl.
Good evening. I'm Ron Burgundy, and this is what's happening in your world tonight.
And again, sometimes the haters win, baby. I don't know how else to say this. Dominant showing from top to bottom. On paper, like if you didn't watch any of the season, or even if you did watch the season, you watch how the Chiefs squeaked out some of these regular season games, not so much the playoffs where they did step their game up a little bit. On paper, you would have been like, yeah, I'm not really surprised this is how the game played out. Like, the Eagles have the much more talented roster, top to bottom. So even though nobody predicted a blowout, there was no way, anybody who even thought the Eagles were going to win, there's no way we would have thought blowout. But on paper, like, blowout wasn't out of the question. It's just we've become so accustomed to what the Chiefs have done all year, despite not really passing the eye test because they've just figured out how to win these games. Their luck finally ran out. Again, they didn't just lose; they got beaten to death.
I'm trying to even think, like, what was the most recent bad one? Was it Carolina against Denver?
It might have been.
Has there been one that bad since?
I think,
it
wasn't.
I can recall.
Carolina Denver, was that as bad of a beating as Seattle Denver? Because Seattle went the other way.
No, I think you're right. I think Seattle Denver was the big
that was the
beatdown.
blowout. Panthers Broncos, I think, was close.
Gave it to Carolina, the otother one too.
Did they?
I think so.
What was the score of that? I feel like, because I remember there was that big stink about Cam not recovering the fumble. It was a 14-point game.
Yeah, okay.
14-point game by the end of it.
Seattle one then.
Yeah, the Seattle blew the shit off Peyton Manning when he was actually good, and then he won a Super Bowl when he wasn't good the year after. But hey, that's just kind of the break sometimes. Yeah, this was a beatdown of epic proportions. There was no time in that game where it looked like the Chiefs particularly had a shot. I did think it was funny that just, Tom Brady in the 28-3 Super Bowl really conditioned us to never be complacent or think this game was over up until it got to 34-0 or so in the fourth quarter. Then we were like, okay, it's probably over at this point.
That was the absolute dagger. Yeah, especially with the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. Like if anyone in the league now was going to make the Brady-esque comeback, it was going to be them.
Yeah, but it definitely took a lot longer for us to call this game over than it would have had that Falcons-Patriots Super Bowl not happened. In reality, it was probably over around halftime, looking back at how the game played out. Mahomes and the Chiefs put up some, kind of empty calorie points and stats there toward the end, made it 40-22. In reality, that is not how close the game was.
That's the thing.
At all.
18 points, it's not a huge blow. I mean, you get blown up.
It's pretty big, but
it was worse. It was realistically, it was a 40-point blowout.
I mean, one of those touchdowns literally came after Sirianni already had Gatorade dumped on his head. So that if that tells you how not close it was. Summary of the game, really. I mean, it was pure dominance by Philly. But to me, the most notable thing was the Eagles' D-line terrorized Mahomes all night, despite not blitzing one time. Just four-man rush and just destroyed the Chiefs O-line.
That's the thing is, even if you'd think when they drop 7, Mahomes will at least have some time to try and find someone. Not only, was the coverage airtight with 7 back there, they were still getting to him with no problem.
Yeah, it was insane. I mean, and look, the Eagles have so much talent on that D-line that it's not like a huge surprise, but that it's just the Georgia fucking football roster. I did see somebody say we saw half of Philly's roster destroy TCU 65-3 a couple years ago. Why are we surprised that this is happening now? I'm like, that's a fair point. That's a fair point. But yeah, so much talent on that D-line and just overwhelming a Chiefs O-line that, again, was playing, Joe Tooney partially out of position because of some injuries that they've had. But this O-line has been, very solid for most of the season, if not above solid.
Bad. They were not a liability whatsoever.
Yeah, so this was just a brutal showing by them. But not only that, the O-line got rock pat, but Mahomes made it worse. Like Mahomes, he is not blameless. This is not he had no time to do anything, and so therefore, he played bad. He had no time to do anything, and he played bad. Like both things were happening at once. He accentuated the issues. That second pick that he threw was just painful.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think he got hit a little bit, but still, just the decision to throw the ball in that direction. It was a bad, whether it's incomplete or an interception, it just wasn't a good idea. And I think it was probably because he was probably a little frazzled. He's not used to playing in that kind of situation on such a big stage. Maybe it got to him. I don't know. I don't know. But, we talked about how, last week he threw his first pick since week 11. And we were like, wow, at the very least, the Chiefs take care of the ball. And 2 picks and a fumble. So, and obviously, one of them was a pick 6 for the Eagles, and the other pick set them up clear as day for, some more points. So not only were the turnovers bad, just terribly timed, and the Eagles just jumped on it, in some cases, almost immediately.
Yeah, I mean, just an uncharacteristically bad performance by Mahomes. And I don't want to overreact to the performance either because, this is a legitimately great Eagles defense. I don't know that people fully realize that, coming into the playoffs or coming into this game, quite how good this Eagles defense is, especially for, casual fans or just people who haven't followed the Eagles super closely or who just maybe vaguely remember how porous the Eagles defense was in the secondary, especially last season. It may not have been super clear just how much they turned it around this year, but this game really evidenced how much they turned it around, and to get this kind of terrible performance out of Mahomes, again, the stat line is going to go down a lot prettier than it really was because of the late touchdowns. But this was abuse by the Eagles defense by a better unit. But it's still an uncharacteristically bad performance by Mahomes and not very goaty, if you ask me, Pat. Because this GOAT conversation is getting a little. We'll get to it in a minute, but it's not.
Well, that's the thing is you look at Brady's 3 Super Bowl losses, 2 of which to Eli Manning. 2 of those games, the Giants, they were fighting tooth and nail. You could argue that they should have won either or both of those games. And it was really only the Philly one where he didn't play great. I don't think he was bad that night per se.
Oh no, the Philly game, Pat, he threw for over 500 yards.
Oh, that was the big one. So
that game was 41-33. Yeah.
So like even in Brady's 3 losses, they weren't bad. He just got beat by 2 fucking miracles and then a really good Eagles team.
Yeah.
Like Mahomes, he never had the beatdown that Mahomes, endured, and yet now Mahomes is 0-2 in Tom Brady involved Super Bowls and 3-0 when he is not. So Tom Brady has now done the Uno reverse, and he has become Patrick Mahomes' Eli Manning, which is probably the biggest accomplishment of his career.
I really don't. I don't like the words you're saying to me right now. I really don't. Yeah, so, I mean, look, you make a great point with the Brady thing. I think the aura alone is simply rattling Mahomes. Like, Brady being in the building, obviously, the first time, he played Brady, so that was one thing. You're not going to beat Brady. It's just not going to happen. But then in this game, I think he just felt the aura from the press box, from the studio, or from the, not the studio, but, from the little broadcast booth up there. And it wasn't pretty.
I guess quick tangent. How do we think Tom did? Because he got a lot of criticism this year. And quite frankly, I thought that he was fine most of the year. Like, obviously, there's going to be the kinks to work out in your first year in the broadcast booth. I thought he was fine. I thought he did a fine job. Kevin Burkhardt's great. He is great. And I thought Brady was fine. I didn't really see a ton of criticism for him the way he got all season. I'd rather listen to Tom Brady call a football game than Tony Romo 9 days a week.
No, I'm with you. I think you said this a couple weeks ago when we were talking about Brady too. You were like, I kind of just think every announcer, most of them are just fine. And I'm totally with you there. I think people are way too critical of stuff like this. And like, you're allowed to have your opinion. You're allowed to not like certain announcers. That's totally fine. But I think people go out of their way sometimes to try to find like flaws, especially in a broadcaster like Tom Brady, that most of the people watching spent the last 20 plus years hating the man on the field. So obviously they're going to try to be critical of his broadcasting skills too. But if you really are honest with yourself, he was completely fine. Yeah. I think he's going to get better as time goes on. And he's somebody that... You're gonna. I mean, I know Romo didn't do that, but he's somebody that nobody else had his kind of perspective, especially for Super Bowls. I mean,
exactly. It was what a perfect time for it. But I don't think he's going to be doing this for that much longer, because I genuinely think he's going to dive headfirst into the Raiders here. Definitely not this coming season, but I would honestly give him like 2 more seasons tops in the booth before he is like the guy calling the shots in Las Vegas. But yeah, and I guess in general, like, we're just kind of, really lucky as football fans, because there's just a lot of really good... These main broadcast teams are all just really good. Even you could shit on Al Michaels for falling asleep as much as you can. I still think those are good broadcasts. Like, we've got it pretty good, especially, I am the Chris Collinsworth Defense Brigade leader and the Joe Buck Defense Brigade leader. So if you have any issues, please contact me.
I like them both, especially Buck. I think Collinsworth is very good, but he just needs to tone down the Mahomes mentions. Like, it's more than a meme at this point. He does mention the guy.
That's what we see from Patrick Mahomes.
He does mention the guy in any game that it's even remotely relevant. I mean, I think he'll hold back on like a Giants-Jags game, but even then, I wouldn't put it past him. He'd be like, "Oh, that was looking awfully Mahomes." No,
Mahomey.
I think the only broadcasters I really have an issue with at this point are a little bit Al Michaels, because I think the energy is lacking. And then, like, Jonathan Vilma, whenever he pops up, he's pretty bad. I don't know what his deal is. But otherwise, we are blessed mostly.
It's not that I dislike Tony Romo. I just think his shtick has kind of worn off, and I think he hides behind his shtick and comes unprepared a lot of the time. Like, I think he just likes to make vowel sounds and say, I don't know, Jim, and get Gene in here for this one. Like, yeah. Exactly, but like at least the passion's there.
Botox injection. I don't know, Jim.
At least the passion's there, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. All right, off of that tangent. Back to the game though. I think one guy, before we get into the GOAT conversation and where this leaves Mahomes all the time and what's next, I do want to give some credit to Jalen Hurts. I think he deserves some more respect after this game, because Jalen Hurts, Pat, I've really come full circle on Jalen Hurts, because go back a couple years ago, I was probably a little too high on Jalen Hurts. I was putting him in like top 5 conversations, and quite frankly, it's something that I've had to adjust for just in my own evaluation of quarterbacks. I definitely guys that were mobile. And I used to just think, if they can move and they could pass at even a halfway decent level, like I think they could be an MVP candidate, all this. Kyler Murray being a good example. I think if you had asked me at the right point in time, maybe in the middle of the COVID season where he was just chucking balls to Hopkins all game, I probably would have told you that he was a top 5 quarterback or could be. And so I was maybe a little too high on Jalen Hurts. Then I kind of came around to his weaknesses a little bit as a passer. And now that we've gone through this full season, and he's still not a perfect quarterback. He still has his weaknesses, but I think you have to move him up a few spots just because of how flawlessly he plays the game most of the time. And to be clear, because I don't want to, make the comparison to like Brock Purdy too much. Again, Brock Purdy's a guy I like, and I don't want to be like, oh, I have Jalen Hurts up here, but why don't I have Purdy up there if I'm just talking about guys that are mistake-free and play the game, smoothly. The reason for me is that Jalen Hurts not only has shown himself now to be an elite processor like this and just very, very mistake-free most of the time, he also still has an elite trait of his mobility and of the tush push that comes along with it. That's the kind of thing that separates him from guys that are just good decision makers with maybe middling traits like a Purdy. So I think Hurts is, if you put Hurts in your top 5 at this point, I'm okay with it.
I think I might. We'll talk about it later, but I think the big difference between him and a guy like Purdy is when a lot of Purdy's explosive plays, it's when he hits Deebo Samuel 7 yards down the field and Samuel takes off. Hurts is more likely to make an explosive play from his own doing, whether it's with his legs. And obviously he's not an elite passer, but like if you're going to take care of the football as well as he takes care of the football, because a lot of the times we see these guys that are rushers, we see them as more volatile kind of players, but like Hurts has the very like the pocket passer poise, yet with such tools with his legs. He's just again, granted, really good offensive line, good system.
Right.
Everything was good for him, obviously. But to get Dan Orlovsky, who is a treasured colleague, who I will share no further opinion on,
and UConn alum.
Yes, okay. To get him to publicly apologize. Well, first of all, him calling Hurts a liability was insane. I mean, you could say that Hurts was kind of the weakest spot, but a liability is just...
Liability is crazy. Considering how well he had protected the ball up to this point, too. Like,
exactly.
It wasn't like it was
for him to say that, well, it was a bit crazy. But yeah, I mean, I think Jalen Hurts has, at the very least, quieted down the haters. And I honestly think another guy here that deserves a lot of the credit is the Dumbo himself, Nick Sirianni. Because, I mean, they were in a position last year where that team melted down. You ask a lot of Philly fans last year, they wanted him gone. And honestly, it wouldn't have been necessarily a bad decision had they canned him. The way that team melted down on both sides of the ball, it was terrible, but he knew his seat was fucking on fire. On fire. And who does he go and get? A guy in Kellen Moore to run the offense that, had some success in Dallas, kind of got scapegoated in Los Angeles. He brings him in. And then you bring in Vic Fangio, who, has been in the league for 40 years. One of the better defensive minds in the game. And to just secure both sides of the football like that, with that good decisions after what it was Brian Johnson and Sean Desai, guys who we had never seen do it before. To bring in these two established guys, they were excellent hires. And I think it will be interesting now. Well, first of all, his seat is ice cold now. He's not, the guy won a Super Bowl. Unless something he would have to kick a kicker like Urban Meyer next year.
He would, there's nothing on the field he could do to get fired within the next 3 years.
Outside circumstances would need to happen. And so he has basically kind of taken his job security into his own hands. So it'll be interesting to see, what his next move in here. Who does he replace Kellen Moore with? I mean, the only downside to winning the Super Bowl here is a lot of these things have shaken out. A lot of these more established offensive coordinators already filled other positions because they could, and you want to get a head start. So it's like, do they promote from within, or do they learn from what happened this year? We're going to get somebody that we've seen do it before.
That's fair. I mean, and on the flip side, too, I would say the benefit of going this deep is that so many of the coaching positions have been filled. I mean, we'll see. Obviously, they're losing Kellen Moore. We'll talk about that. But, I wonder, will they lose as many assistants to the Kellen Moore regime as they might have if they got bounced a couple rounds ago? Maybe the pass game coordinator gets poached or the D-line coach like we saw happen to the Lions. I wonder, We'll see how many guys Kellen ends up taking, but going this deep into the playoffs might have helped them just in the sense that teams filled positions that they would have otherwise considered Eagles guys for. So we'll see.
I saw a name earlier that was potentially going to be on his staff. I forget.
I'm sure there will be a couple. But they have probably avoided a mass.
It was Brandon Staley. Fuck that.
Oh, who cares? Yeah,
I knew it.
So yeah, look, credit to the Eagles. I was absolutely wrong on Nick Sirianni. He was a guy that at the end of last year, I think I made a short video of like coaches that need to be fired into the sun, and he was on that list.
I mean, that could still be true because the guy's kind of a.
That's yeah.
Someone said Kellen Moore's always the smartest guy in the room, and it's like, yeah, 90% of the time he's in the same room as Nick Sirianni. So like
that's true. The bar is low. Nick Sirianni's a good coach, good motivator. Don't know if the old IQ outside of football
kind of
is super high.
Yeah.
But he definitely seems to be the right coach for Philly, so I will take the L on that. This was a do or die year for him, Pat. We talked about it
and
last
not only did he not
offseason.
die, like he could have saved his job by just having a good year and going to the playoffs. Like I said, he took that completely out of the equation, him losing his job.
Yeah, he didn't die in the do or die. He did real hard. And we talked about it with just how big those coordinator hires were and how monumental, how that played out was going to be in terms of his job security, and he nailed it. He nailed both the hires. So yeah, credit to Sirianni, credit to Hurts, who I think needs to get more credit. Again, important to keep perspective that yes, best supporting cast in football, but there's just something to be said for a guy who is an elite processor, makes great decisions so consistently, and has an elite trait like being able to run like that. Like, if you were to take, before this postseason run, Pat, you would have had to break my neck for me to tell you that I thought Jalen Hurts was a better quarterback than Justin Herbert. But now, seeing these things play out, it's like, is Justin Herbert still the more physically talented quarterback? Yeah, but that's not enough to keep him. That's not enough to keep him above Hurts in a ranking anymore. It's like, you go further down the spectrum, like, is Anthony Richardson a more physically... Probably, but that's not really what we're looking at here. You got to look at the right combination of the two things. And when you have Hurts, who is, at the very least, a top 5, mental processing quarterback in terms of decisions, I think you got to start putting him in these conversations. So I'm glad I've been able to come full circle on Jalen Hurts, because I didn't want to, jump off the wagon and be like, I guess he's actually not that good, just because he's a guy I've rooted for so long. He's just a player I've liked. I just felt like I had to get more realistic about him at one point. But now, I mean, he's proved me both right and wrong somehow in this playoff run. So I'm very, very happy for him. And I think he is firmly up those rankings, definitively a top 10 quarterback, but, certainly in those top 5 conversations now. Now, on the other side, Patrick Mahomes. All people have been talking about since this game, it seems like. And all they were talking about, relating to Mahomes' legacy heading into the game was, what is his status in the GOAT debate? Where does this put him as it pertains to Tom Brady? Because he was on the doorstep of doing something that Brady had never done before. And for a lot of people, it seemed like that was enough for them to already call him the GOAT. And honestly, while that is jumping the gun pretty hard, in my opinion, I can't fully argue with it if that was how it played out. But that's not what happened. So let me start here, though, because I do think this requires a qualifier before we get into the GOAT debate and where Mahomes has landed within it. I do think the way people evaluate quarterback legacies in general is flawed, because I saw someone say that it would be better for Mahomes' legacy, in the eyes of the public, the general public, that is, if he had just lost to the Bills on the last possession of that game, instead of making it to the Super Bowl where he'd get blown out. And they're right. In terms of how
they are right.
In terms of how the general public views that sort of thing, they're right. Which is so dumb. It should always be considered better to get to the Super Bowl, regardless of what happens after, than to lose beforehand in, a close game to a good team. But this is just where kind of the ring culture has gone, that it matters what you do once you get there. And it does matter what you do once you get there, but there's no world to me where losing a Super Bowl is a more detrimental outcome than losing in the previous round. That should not be the better thing. So, but with that out of the way, I'll play the game. I'll understand how people view these things, and then we will approach the Mahomes, GOAT debate status within the idea that, yeah, I guess it would have been better for his legacy if he just lost last round, but whatever. Playing by these flawed rules. Some people have declared the debate over. the GOAT debate is over. It's Tom Brady's. Mahomes can't catch him. Even as an ardent Tom Brady supporter and loyal fan, it's not over. You can't say it's not.
Mahomes can go and win 3 more Super Bowls in his career. Like
he could still three-peat. He could just do it starting next year. Like you don't know.
Exactly. That's the thing. Like if Mahomes retires tomorrow, absolutely, it's Tom Brady's.
Sure,
no question about it. Because like you said, Brady did not do this on this big of a stage. But how old is Mahomes? I'm so bad at
29. 29. He will turn 30 next year in September.
He'll be 30 next year. Obviously, we'll see how much of an Andy Reid merchant he is somewhere in the near future, you'd think.
And we'll see how much longevity he has, too, because quarterbacks either seem to fall off at 34 or 40, so you never know.
But he has not really had any major injuries. He, rolls his ankle once a week and
he's just
hobbles
Steph
off
Curry
the field for the show. But he's been very durable, so there's no reason to believe that he won't be able to make it at least towards his upper 30s. And as long as Andy Reid is there and Patrick Mahomes is there, they're going to have a chance. They should at least be viewed as one of the 2 favorites to get to the Super Bowl from the AFC. So to declare it over just after this one performance, Mahomes can go next year and blow someone out 70-0 and throw for 700 yards.
Yeah.
And then we'll all be saying, oh my God, he already passed him. Recency bias is just so strong. So strong here. Like I said, to even bring your team back to the Super Bowl for a 3rd straight time when realistically they weren't that good. To get there again, it is something in itself. It is true. I didn't even think about it that way, where that had he got knocked out in the AFC Championship, it would be better for his legacy. It is true. But there is still something to be said about getting to the Super Bowl in the first place. But yeah, this blemish on his legacy is something that Brady will never have, and Mahomes will probably have to win a couple more Super Bowls and probably not lose another if he wants to take this.
Yeah, I think the debate's not over, but I think he's definitely made it harder on himself now. This was a huge turning point in the GOAT debate just because he went from trying to accomplish something Brady never did to, three-peating, to doing something else Brady never did for a second time, and that is getting blown out in the playoff, or in the Super Bowl, excuse me. Brady's Super Bowl losses were by 3 points, 4 points, and 8 points. So this is now Mahomes. I tweeted this after the game. I was like, if there's one thing about Patrick Mahomes, if he's going to lose a fucking Super Bowl, he's going to fucking lose. He's going to lose it really hard.
You know what's going to happen now? If someone loses a huge game on Sunday Night Football, Chris Collinsworth is going to be like, and this is something we see from Patrick Mahomes.
We're going to see the replay of that Raiders-Chargers game where the Raiders won 65-3 or something. This is what happens to Patrick Mahomes.
That gave Antonio Pierce a job, unfortunately. That game, I think
that's true.
I think that game, but. The other thing with Mahomes, it's true. It's like the tweet, man, LeBron is 30. Surely this fuckery won't go on for too much longer. We could be realistically looking at a world where Mahomes does duplicate at least Brady's longevity. And if he does that, you'd think he's going to at least get back to a few more Super Bowls.
Well, and that's the thing, too, that, as a Brady fan has made me nervous about just Mahomes creeping up this entire time, is that, even if Mahomes doesn't play, he's probably not going to play to 45, right? That just doesn't usually happen like Brady did. It could,
just this day and age in general, it just doesn't.
Right.
You'd be hard-pressed to see someone do that.
Right, but let's say he does play to 40 and plays well. The Super Bowl drought that Brady had with 10 years in between just leaves such a huge gap for Mahomes to be able to make up ground here. If he just makes... If he doesn't have such a huge, drought like that, he can catch Brady without having to play to age 45. So we'll see. It's definitely doable. But yeah, getting blown out in the Super Bowl, it's going to matter in terms of these arguments, especially with one of those losses coming to Tom Brady. It's going to be hard pressed to, I think, make up ground here, which is funny too, because I'll admit this and, give both sides to each argument. Brady did get blown out in the playoffs several times, usually by Baltimore for some reason. But just because it didn't happen in the Super Bowl, it's viewed as, less egregious. It's just kind of how it goes. But that is how people will view it, and we have to be aware of that.
And our boy Alex, longtime listener in the chat, brings up a good point with how stacked the AFC is right now. If Mahomes can get through what is going to be a gauntlet on a year-to-year basis with the likes of Allen, Lamar, Burrow,
Drake.
You know, if he's going to be the GOAT, he's really going to have to earn it.
Yeah, I think I have it here, Pat, from Mahomes to past Brady. I think at this point, he probably has to win more than 7. Like, I don't know.
Wow.
I don't know. I don't know how Mahomes can finish his career with fewer rings than Tom Brady and have a better GOAT argument than him when, again, he never got blown out, whether you want to value that or not. Most people are going to. And one of the losses was to Brady when Brady was 44 years old. Like, that's crazy. So it was a huge, I don't think people quite realized how big of a dent it would make in his argument. People were so focused on, he could establish himself already as maybe the GOAT if he three-peats. It wasn't like, if he loses, or at least loses in this fashion, it's really a big hit.
See, realistically, the loss to Brady should be the more damning mark against him than this. I don't think it's gonna be in the general public eye, though. I think people forgive that one more just because the Chiefs were actually playing with a paper-mache offensive line at that point. Like, that game was Mahomes' performance was so bad. He was for his life,
He was under duress all game. This was one where the O-line, they got worked, but Mahomes also, as we mentioned, made it a lot worse on himself. So I think that's why it's forgiven a little more, even though it was against Brady. Narrative-wise, it certainly hurts maybe more than this one because it was against Tom, and that's the guy you're trying to chase, but, it is what it is. So, yeah, I think this puts Mahomes in a really tough spot, which as a Brady fan, I'm not upset, but, that's just kind of the reality.
And before we put a bow on the Super Bowl here, can I get mad about something that you're not going to believe, that a side that you wouldn't think I was going to take?
100%.
For all of you fucks that are sitting here crying about Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl halftime performance, get a fucking life. Like, you see all my instruments behind me. I love old music. I love rock music. I just don't like rap music. You know what I did?
Pat is a Beach Boy, basically.
You know what I did? I was at my friend's. I went down the hallway and laid with their dog in the spare bedroom for 15 minutes because I didn't care. I didn't sit there and watch this and then get in my feelings online because of a DEI halftime show. The guy won record of the year this fucking year. 5 times he's reached number 1.
I do think it's funny that people cannot separate, this isn't my taste in music versus this was a terrible choice. How could they do this?
You want them to fucking trot out like 100-year-old Rolling Stones to play the halftime?
Yes, they do.
They do, but or the corpse of Toby Keith, bring him out there to
they want
play
Fleetwood Mac or nothing.
Play the fucking national anthem. It's like, they literally got one of the most popular artists right now to play the halftime show, and they're like, bad call because I don't like this myself. Like, just so... Somebody posted in Southington Talks an absolute gold mine saying, what did we all think of the halftime performance? And the comments were just mad old people.
For those wondering, that is a Facebook page for... I guess I'm not doxing myself. I don't live there anymore. But
I've literally
my former hometown, and that's like the local Facebook page that old people will, post shit like, what was that noise? Why didn't my garbage get picked up today? That kind of shit. So
I went for my mom's account,
suburban ass town.
A couple weeks ago, my mom was asking me to do something on her Facebook, and I posted on it saying, did anyone just hear that? And I begged her not to delete it. I begged her, but she deleted it anyway. But yeah, that's the thing, I didn't even know, people... I was in a prop sheet where it was what song will Kendrick play first? I put Not Like Us, because that's the only song I know he has. That's how little I care about Kendrick Lamar in hip-hop music. But, I just... if I didn't care, so I didn't watch it. And if I did watch it, I wouldn't have cared.
Yeah, I tweeted about that, too. I was like, people just live to bitch. It was fine. It wasn't. Was it the most mind-bogglingly good halftime show either? No. But was it a good halftime show? Yeah. It was a lot of well-known, popular music on top of some of his lesser-known stuff. But it was one of the most popular artists, like you said, doing a solid halftime show.
I also don't even know.
It was really funny.
I don't even know what a good rap performance is. That's the thing. I'm so out of touch. I don't even know. So why am I going to share my opinion? That sucks. I don't know if it sucked. I didn't know. I didn't know what it was. It's been so polarizing because some people are saying like that was the best thing I've ever seen, and other people literally want to put on their white hoods and get their torches and like and head down to New Orleans. Like this could not be further apart here.
This is a terrible transition, and I don't know if I should even say this, but I don't care. Speaking of white hoods, I saw someone refer to Cooper DeJean as Ku Klux Clamps.
He's a DEI hire. Cooper DeJean is a DEI hire.
Pick six in the Super Bowl. So, I mean, that is, I do not endorse that nickname, but it did make me fucking laugh, I gotta admit.
Funny as shit.
I gotta admit. That got me. Yeah, okay, let's move on. That is the end of our Super Bowl discussion. But just transitioning in, Pat, I think this is a good discussion because we were just talking about, Hurts needs more credit and Patrick Mahomes didn't quite have the best performance here. Post-Super Bowl, top 5 quarterback ranking. Let's just take note here of where we stand of the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. Simply ranking them by who do you want leading your team. You can have anybody. Rank them 1 to 5. Yeah. I am at a point where after this game and after the last couple seasons of just, statistical mediocrity from Mahomes, and I understand he won the last 2 Super Bowls. I don't want to discredit that completely either, but to see that he is human sometimes based on this was enough for me to knock him down just 1 spot, just 1. I am willing at this point to put Josh Allen above him. I think I have Josh Allen, the MVP, as the number 1 quarterback, which I also added that to our show sheet. We could talk about the NFL.
I forgot about it until I realized just now.
Yeah, I realized that happened.
I'm like, did that happen within the last week? Like,
yeah,
see,
we
that's
made
the
our
thing.
predictions.
Like, I think if I needed a quarterback, I guess I'm kind of looking at it more from like an overall talent right now standpoint, not like who's going to win you a Super Bowl. I've got Lamar Jackson at number 1, and like I thought he was kind of a shoo-in to win MVP. I was shocked. I was shocked when he didn't win MVP, and just it's also those top 3 are like, obviously you've got to kind of take a stand here and like make your pick, but like it all feels so interchangeable with those top 3. Like
I'll say this. I am factoring in, because this was my reasoning for knocking down Mahomes was basically Super Bowl performance and just seeing what Allen has done now over the last couple seasons. I am factoring in playoff performance, which is why I'm not having Lamar in my top 2.
That's
just
fair.
Because
that's fair.
Unfortunately, the narrative kind of got reinforced this year where it's less of a narrative and more of a, hey, dude, show up in a meaningful playoff game beyond the first round, please. So I just have him down there because he has not shown an ability to stay fully composed in the playoffs. So I got Allen because I feel like he's peaking at the right time. I feel like he's putting up the numbers. He's putting on the show. And again, their loss to the Chiefs was obviously not on him. So I got Allen at 1. I got Mahomes at 2. I got Lamar at 3. Lamar is probably the most purely talented quarterback.
See, that's what I think. That's what I mean.
He's the best. He's the best regular season quarterback in football. Yeah, that's not even debatable.
I think that was what. Obviously, I just put that order down hastily while we were talking, and like Lamar, just I think it was the talent that sort of propelled me to put him there. But like, if we were like making a tier list, let's put these NFL quarterbacks into a tier list. Like if we were making a tier list, I feel like those 3 are in a tier, are in the same tier. Like I don't feel like they're split apart. And
which I think that's I think the difference too after maybe this Super Bowl is a lot of people for the last couple of years have just by default had Mahomes in his own tier. I think if anything else, this has humanized him a little bit to kind of take away some of the mystique. I think at least if you were to tier it out, maybe not rank it. Maybe ranking it's the wrong way to go because that forces you to, differentiate when maybe you shouldn't. I think it's okay to have Mahomes at least in the same tier as Allen, and maybe you could argue Lamar, but again, the playoff shortcomings kind of make that hard for me.
And I think Joe Burrow's in a tier of his own at number 4. Like I think he is just clearly the other guy. Like he's the Teddy Roosevelt on Mount Rushmore looking ass of the QB Mount Rushmore right now. Yeah. Just because like when you make this list, like for me, it was decisive who the top 4 were. Decisive. Sure. And then with 5, it's like, I don't really know. So like while Burrow isn't quite on there because he doesn't quite have the, I guess the raw talent of the other 3 or the accolades of someone like Patrick Mahomes. So, but I think he is firmly entrenched as the number 4 and probably will be for a while.
I think he's got a way to move up. I think if he were to, I mean, God, all it takes is the Bengals to get back to a Super Bowl like they did a couple years ago and actually finish the job. I think you'd have plenty of people honestly calling him the best quarterback in the league if he were to put up numbers like he just did this past year. So I think there's an avenue for him to get past 4 for sure. But for now, I also do have him 4. So just for my top 5, as we sit here post Super Bowl, 2 days after, Allen at 1, Mahomes at 2, Lamar at 3, Burrow at 4, and I'm sticking with my guns, Daniels at 5. After saying Hurts needs that respect, I think I would probably put Hurts at 6 right there. I just think Daniels is a little, again, we only have 1 year of looking at it, but I think Daniels is a little more well-rounded of a talent, I guess, while also having similar decision-making skills as Hurts. At least
while Daniels, obviously Daniels is a little younger, not like Hurts is some fucking geriatric, but
no, and I mean Daniels came in the league old too. So
he does have a higher ceiling than him in both aspects. Where he's probably a pound for pound a more explosive runner than Hurts, and obviously if you want one of those two guys chucking the ball down the field, I'd rather have Jaden Daniels do it. But I would put Hurts in front of him just because Hurts isn't that far off in those things, and this is a guy who has led his team to 2 Super Bowls, and they won one of them, and they were damn close in another one of them. And again, I think this year he just really invented himself as this just poised quarterback who also has, this dual threat ability. And, Daniels would be number 6 for me. No doubt. And then I think the only other person that I would even really think in that conversation would be Justin Herbert at 7. Like, if you had to ask me a top 10, if you had to ask me a top 10, I don't fucking know after that. But those, when I think of who the best quarterbacks in the NFL are, those are the 7 to me that even come into my head at all.
I think that's fair. I think Matthew Stafford, maybe, in
Matthew
that
Stafford
combo as well.
Jared Goff!
Yeah, I think he's around there. I mean, he's, again, a guy that you have to acknowledge how good the system is around him, but then you also can't deny what he's been able to do with it. There are guys, again, I don't want to keep piling on Justin Herbert, but it's Justin Herbert's offensive kind of pieces around him. Yes, you could argue he needs another receiver. He almost certainly does. But for a guy like him to have a very good offensive line, a solid run game, and solid pass catchers, he threw the game away. So there's something to be said for guys that don't throw the game away. Granted, I did just remember that Jared Goff threw those 5 interceptions against the Texans. That's also who Herbert
won the football.
And won. But that's also who Herbert collapsed against in the playoffs. So watch out for that Texans.
I was trying to think of number 10, and unfortunately, I don't think it's C.J. Stroud anymore. I hate to say it, but I'll move away from the microphone so I don't ear torture everyone. Yeah, here we go.
A healthy Dak. Yeah, I mean, look.
I think it might be a healthy. Like I said, I'm literally thinking about this for the first time right now. I haven't sat here and written it down on my piece of paper. That's just the name that comes to mind there. But Stroud, I think, is still, in theory, in the conversation.
Yeah,
Aiden O'Connell at 11. And
if I had to guess, after this next season, I feel like there will be guys that permeate or get near the top 10 out of just the young guys that might take a step forward. Michael Penix is going to get his first real action. Caleb Williams has a real team now. Drake May is going to have a better supporting cast. Bo Nix already had a good year.
Could have another good year, yeah. I think Bo Nix is probably already in the top half or probably top 16.
Probably,
again,
yeah.
I'm talking out of my ass right now. I have no idea. I don't have a full list, but just in theory.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Aiden O'Connell is not trash. If we had a mod, I'd say that no.
I mean, I'm the mod, I guess.
Dox yourself.
Past the quarterback predictions. Next year, Pat, way too early Super Bowl prediction. This doesn't even need to require real analysis because we haven't had free agency, the draft. Obviously, this time last year, the Eagles had 1 billion holes to fill, and they did a great job filling them. What is our Super Bowl prediction for next season?
Well, Raiders, obviously.
Naturally. Yep, Raiders.
I'm actually I want to go way off the grain, and I'll go the Bengals.
I was going to go Bengals.
Just because, I think they're just, the fun choice where it's we talked about it. They have a top 4 quarterback.
They got the guy, yeah.
Even if they lose T. Higgins to all 31 other teams in the league, then they've still got Jamar Chase. Chase Brown looked great. Zach Taylor has at least proven to be able to run a good offense. All that is still there. If they can shore up the defense a bit, there's no reason why, they can't it's not going to be one of these cases where they're going to have to build back up into contention. It's almost like the Rams. There's no reason to think that they just can't vault right back towards the top of the AFC. NFC, I don't even know who the fun pick would be. I guess the 49ers, but even that, I think that's going to be a little bit more of a slow build. Not a slow build, but then the Bengals, the Lions, because they still haven't made a Super Bowl, so that's still a good pick to
them finish that job. Yeah. I think those are good picks. God, Bengals Lions Super Bowl would be such a feel-good Super Bowl. We'd be so happy just because whoever wins that's
the thing. When was the last time we've had a Super Bowl where it was like
Bengals Rams? I think Bengals Rams.
Yeah,
that was a great one. But
it was either Joe Burrow. Everybody likes Joe Burrow, or
Matt Stafford.
Exactly.
That's other than that, it's always been
Brady
the Patriots in it, and
there's
always been a clear somebody that we want to lose because of dynasty purposes. All right, my Super Bowl prediction for next season. How about let's go the Denver Broncos.
Ooh, that's kinky. Biased.
Denver. I don't even like them. The Denver Broncos against the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles get back. I think the Eagles are built so nicely that
See, again, I don't know really the free agent situation, but at least of their skill position players, nobody's going anywhere.
Shit, dude. Their defense is
they're all young. They're all still on their rookie contracts.
Yeah,
Jordan Davis them getting Jalen Carter, what was it, 9 or 10? Illegal. Well, that's not the only illegal thing he's done.
Something else illegal is the reason he fell.
That's got to be the worst thing involving Jalen Carter that's ever. But in all seriousness, the fact that they got him then, even with whatever character issues you were concerned about, absurd.
Yeah,
he was in theory, in terms of talent on a big board, he should have been number one.
Oh, anybody.
Obviously, the quarterbacks were gonna go that year, but
anybody that knew anything knew that was going to be a problem as soon as it happened, because Jalen Carter, if you had gone back, 2 months prior to the draft, he was projected number one.
He was the number one on every billboard, big board,
and then it was basically strictly the legal issues that knocked him down.
That was 2 years ago, right? That was the Young and Stroud draft. Yeah.
What was that? The Young and Stroud draft? No, I think that was the year before. Hold on, I got this.
Who am I mixing him up with? Am I mixing him up with?
Jalen Carter was drafted. Oh wait, no, you might be right. 2023. Yeah, I guess it was. Yeah, it was. Man. Yeah, that's a big problem. So, look, ultimately...
Good draft class, man.
Shit. Young, Stroud, Will Anderson,
Richardson.
And then, you go further down. Bijan,
Christian Gonzalez is in that class as well, right?
I think so. Bijan, Jalen Carter, Jahmyr Gibbs, Christian Gonzalez, right after the Commanders took Emmanuel Forbes. Lol. JSN, who's actually good now.
That
Zay
looked
Flowers,
bad at the time, man.
Jordan Addison. Yeah, this is a solid class.
That's a really good class. Only 2 years in.
That was a huge mistake that Carter. I agree. You can't call it a mistake really, because valid concerns what if the guy actually goes to prison, for something like that. I'm sure
what if he does it and then we win the Super Bowl in year 2?
That's apparently what played out. So Super Bowl, Broncos, Eagles, and Eagles 2-peat, and then Hurts enters the GOAT conversation.
For the love of God.
One of the fallouts, Pat, of the Eagles winning the Super Bowl, or at least something that was able to get triggered by the season finally fully ending, was the New Orleans Saints hiring Eagles offensive coordinator Kellen Moore as their head coach.
It's like the Mr. Krabs shocked meme, like a bomb.
We knew this was coming. I did think it was very funny that Sirianni, and honestly kind of cringe that Sirianni tried to peer pressure Kellen Moore. He's like, let's run this back, Kellen.
Everybody knew. There's not there wasn't, tampering this, tampering that, because they got fucked with Jonathan. The Cardinals got fucked with Jonathan Gannon a few years ago. Everybody fucking knew. I think at that point that was more just tongue in cheek. But cringe. But this was
he wasn't going to take that job.
Right. And the Saints were really interesting out of the whole, their pool of candidates was always kind of just a hodgepodge. The Jets and the Bears, their thing was just kind of, we're interviewing everybody. Yeah. And the Cowboys was, we're interviewing every fucked up candidate we can think of.
We're going to the island of misfit toys.
Who were either really honed in, the Raiders wanted a leader. The Raiders wanted an established coach. These other teams wanted a young offensive-minded guy. the Saints had a little bit of everything. You look at their finalists alone when it was Kellen Moore, Mike Kafka, and Anthony Weaver, as well as Mike McCarthy being firmly involved as
Aaron
well.
Glenn for a while.
You weren't sure.
Yes.
Yep. You weren't sure necessarily what direction they were gonna go in, and I think Kellen Moore's a really good direction to go in because, in theory, the Saints have a lot of talent, but it's all very conditional. Derek Carr might be the most volatile quarterback in the entire league right now. His ceiling has been, and that's the problem. He doesn't even have the ceiling he had.
Derek Carr with the needs Raiders. To go be a volatile insurance salesman and get off the field.
Go on NFL Network with his brother, Raider legend. But
and his eye makeup.
But Alvin, every year it's the Alvin Kamara downfall. Alvin Kamara is still playing at an incredibly high level, and in theory, as long as Chris Olave's brain isn't made of purple slime now. This was a guy who was still taken right outside the top 10. Was an elite wide receiver prospect. And, Rashid Shaheed, our boy, Kellen Moore but that's the thing is, there are some things to be excited about in New Orleans, but it just kind of feels like they're in the bayou. It's like a swamp. It feels like a swamp.
Well, and truthfully, I think it's even less about, yes, you get excited about some of the guys they still have as holdovers, but it's less about the pieces they have now because the Saints, it seems by every indication, are aware that this is going to be a multi-year process. They're in cap hell. They're in cap hell. They don't have a lot of talent. They just brought in a new head coach. This isn't a case where, unless they go literally 0-17, there is no world where Kellen Moore isn't getting several years out of this because they know they have to be patient because of just the corner that they've backed themselves into. I mean, I think they're still paying Michael Thomas, Pat, and I don't know where Michael Thomas is. Man. So this is it's a bad situation for the Saints. This next year's not going to be pretty. This next year feels like, look, Kellen Moore is a much better head coaching fit than Gerard Mayo was, but this feels like what I was heading into with the Patriots last season, where it's you need to accept at least 1 year of pretty bad poverty before you can start to see some things you're excited about. The Saints aren't even in position to draft a quarterback of the future right now unless they want a guy who's outside of the top, 2 or 3 prospects, or they want to trade up for a guy. I don't think Spencer Rattler's probably going to be that guy, but he might be the one they roll with this year, though.
The Jake Haener erasure is disturbing.
Yeah, Jake Haener.
That's the thing, that's the thing. I don't know what you're doing. Oh, right, that's right.
It's the Jake Haener photo shoot.
That's right.
He's so sexy.
And the thing, looking at the get him on the pod. Thinking about looking at some of the free agents, like I said, after Sam Darnold and even Justin Fields, there's just a lot of dookie. There's not even the only obvious backup that a team can make their starter is Justin Fields. There isn't a whole lot. Maybe they can go take a chance on someone like fucking Will Levis, or something. That. But that's what I mean. There's not really a lot of good options, and they don't have a great pick either, right? Because they weren't that bad. I don't know the full order.
I think they're top 10, but I don't know.
So but the thing is, with this quarterback class not being the strongest, you're not getting anybody at 9. It is 9.
Yeah, 9.
You're not going to really get. Ward or Shador.
We'll see how it shakes out. They're definitely not getting either of the top 2 guys. There's been a lot of buzz lately about Jackson Dart as a first-round pick, so maybe I don't know whether that's enough buzz for him to go up. Yeah. I don't know if that's enough buzz for him to go up to say number 3. I mean, look, each of the top 3 teams picking in the draft do need a quarterback. It's the Titans, the Browns, and the Giants. So if he gets enough of that buzz from now until late April, maybe he does go top 3.
Jameis reunion.
Jameis reunion in New Orleans?
In New Orleans.
Yeah. I
think Jameis has a decent chance to start somewhere next year.
I do too. Here's the thing. He's almost the perfect quarterback for the Saints next year because he's not the answer. And the Saints know that whatever they do next season isn't a sticking point. That's not an actual
They could be trying to get the number 1 pick to get their quarterback in the future. That's
true.
The thing.
That's true.
There's no. So, but yeah, Jameis could fit. But I think if we are trying to build something in New Orleans, I think Kellen Moore is a really good way to go because young guy. I was very upset to look up that Statue of Liberty play happened in 2007. And it made me want to disintegrate of old age when I saw that personally. That was like the first year I ever watched college football. And I remember that, like, my mind being blown by that Statue of Liberty play against Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl, which UConn would go to the next year. Or was that 08? Yeah.
I think
that
so.
was the 08
sounds
season.
right.
Yeah.
Sounds right.
So yeah, someone who's been, successful in Dallas, someone who can play, not now he can play, who has played. I just think it's a good decision.
Yeah, I think that's fair. The New York Jets, Pat, have made their move at the quarterback position, at least seemingly. They are expected to move on from Aaron Rodgers.
This was the funniest. Like, I was literally on my way to a Super Bowl party. I got the notification, got in the car, and I did not think about it once for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
Like, my dad, who follows sports really closely, didn't even know until I brought it up yesterday. Yeah. I was like, yeah, so they're moving on from Rodgers. Oh, really? Like that's they accomplished like A+ news dump on their end. And I think the question was kind of going to be because, again, Rodgers statistically wasn't that bad. He was actually pretty solid. So
he's got enough left.
But it's everything else. It's, the attention he brings to the team. It's the attention he needs on himself from an organizational standpoint, from an outside standpoint.
He's not the guy you want around for
if
a
you
culture
are
reset.
Exactly. If you are really trying to build something, Aaron Rodgers is not going to be your guy for that. It's just how much did they necessarily care? And it's clear that they're moving in that direction. And I think when they hired Aaron Glenn, you could kind of think that, because when you think of Aaron Glenn, you think of, more a hard-nosed football guy. And Aaron Rodgers seemed like he might have clashed with that, a much stronger personality than Robert Saleh, for example. So, it seems that they are truly all in on making this their direction of completely reinventing themselves. And, good for them. And unfortunately, I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be the quarterback on my team next year, which again, from a statistical standpoint, is fine, because the Raiders are in a similar position to the Saints, where new head coach, and they have nothing. They really have nothing to build off of here. So it's like you bring in Rodgers. Obviously, he's not someone you want to build around. Raiders aren't going to be building shit. The Raiders are just going to try and pick up whatever pieces they can, and then have a great pick for 2026, and then go from there. So I think from the Raiders standpoint, I'd rather have Aaron Rodgers than Russell Wilson right now.
That's fair. Yeah,
absolutely. Right now, I'd rather have that. And the Steelers are the other team that's being heavily mentioned, right?
They're the top two. Yeah, Raiders
and
Steelers, and then in a lesser degree the Saints, which I think makes sense, and then the 49ers are one that I kind of vetted.
They've been tied to him.
A few different odds makers, and they all kind of had the Niners somewhere in the top 5, and I was like,
they've been tied to him since they didn't draft him in 05.
Yeah, my thing about
since
the
they took
Niners,
Alex Smith over him, it's always been he wants to go play in the Bay Area. He wants to, because he is going to have something. Well, if they cut him straight up, he's going to have a lot of a say of where he goes. But if they trade him, he's still going to have a big say. My
thing with the Niners as a landing spot is if they, first of all, they're not expected to move on from Brock Purdy, but it's if they were to move on from Brock Purdy, decide he's not worth $60 million a year, which I don't think he is. I don't think that this would be their next move. I think they would why would you move on from Brock Purdy knowing that the youth that he has and go to Aaron Rodgers?
Makes no sense.
It would would I understand a little more if they were let's go get Sam Darnold and only pay him $30 a year as opposed to $60 for Brock. That would make sense to me, but not as much.
If this was 3 or 4
years
ago,
Brock, so.
Yeah, if this was 3 or 4 years ago, absolutely, you go and get Aaron Rodgers, towards the top of his game.
Right.
But, yeah, the Raiders were kind of one of the teams, it seems that's like Brady wanted to go there, and Rodgers thought, he was in the conversation for Rodgers. It has the audience. It's fucking Las Vegas. It's a big enough stage where he'll get the attention that he wants there. And again, this is kind of just such a football team that's just wandering so aimlessly that getting Aaron Rodgers there to kind of just get them in and out of games, if that's what they got to do, that's what they got to do. And like I said, if it's him, first of all, do not pay Sam Darnold. Don't do it. I will be genuinely very upset if they pay Sam Darnold.
Such a bad idea. Yeah.
They need to kind of go the just because they're in such a bad position where they can't get one in the draft, they need to kind of just go with that veteran. But Aaron Rodgers is a lot better than Gardner Minshew. And then, I don't even remember who, and fucking Jimmy Garoppolo. Like, he's on a higher level of this Raider plan. And I think another guy in this list, the Debo news, that came out this week as well,
That
right?
did. Yep.
Debo Samuel won. The 49ers, from their perspective, they are trying to move him, and they have given him and his agent permission to seek a trade. And I tweeted the meme of, like, who want me? 0%. Like,
Yeah.
But in all honesty, Debo Samuel will be a pretty appealing piece going in here. And again, like, come to the Raiders, man. Come to the Raiders, man.
You want him on the Raiders, really?
Absolutely. They need some. They need him and Brock Bowers and then Jacoby Myers. That's a solid group right there. Again, the Raiders aren't trying to be earth beaters.
I don't know. It just screams to me DeAndre Hopkins, Amari Cooper, like big name, fading the fuck away, don't fall for it kind of thing. At the same time, I'll give him some credit. He was hospitalized with pneumonia this past year. So to do that in the middle of a season, like that was something that I don't think enough attention got paid to, because that was probably a pretty grueling thing to go through.
Probably should have just taken more time for that.
In the middle of a season, and then to be dealing with, the repercussions of that just health-wise. I'm sure that wasn't fun. But with that said, like, Debo's performance this year just was not inspiring enough for me to be like, yeah, let's go get. Not only that, like we've talked about it before. We've been chasing what he did 4 years ago for 4 years. Like I just don't.
Yeah, I mean,
I just don't care.
But if you look at him as like just kind of like that veteran building, just kind of building block piece.
I get that.
But the thing
Depends
is, I
what
don't
it costs.
think. Well, that too.
Like, is there going to be a restructure here? Like, what's going to be the deal?
You know that Debo values himself way more than that, though. Like, Debo values himself way closer to what he was 4 years ago than what he is now.
Right.
And I think that could be, kind of a holdup here. But I think on most teams that need help at wide receiver, like, cost matters. But, like, the Raiders have a fuck ton of cap space. So, they're going to have to pay somebody. They're going to have to pay somebody anyway. So
That's the Patriots are in the same situation.
Exactly. Like, the Jags are kind of at least okay in their weapons core, but another team that just has a fuck ton of cap space. But, yeah, I mean, for the 49ers, this seemed inevitable. It's funny, with all the Ayuk shit, that Debo's going to be the one that ends up being gone.
I think that was the move that made the most sense to begin with. Like, if they were to have let Ayuk go or traded him, and obviously it seems like they got somewhat close to that. They at least considered it up until fucking 6 days before the season started.
Yeah.
That just didn't make a lot of sense. Like, Debo was a guy that even before this last season was declining. Is 29 years old. Like, Ayuk is younger. He's such a different receiver that, like, I don't want to say flat out better. I mean, better at this stage, yes, but like Ayuk is the kind of guy you should be prioritizing holding on to rather than a declining asset like Debo. That just would have been silly to me, because then if you traded Ayuk, didn't get a receiver in return, which presumably they wouldn't have, and then you have Debo who's like still has the same season he just had, then you're left with, I mean, I guess it could be worse than Juwan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall.
Well, I was about to say,
there's no reason to do that to yourself.
We talked about last year how, like, if Ayuk gets traded, buy all the Ricky Pearsall stock. That was before he got fucking shot. But it was Juwan Jennings all along. I think even if Ricky Pearsall hadn't gotten shot, Juwan Jennings was always going to be the next guy to emerge from that wide receiver group. And I think if Debo is gone with an Ayuk recovering from ACL surgery, Juwan Jennings, I think, is going to be drafted as, maybe, again, I'm talking out of my ass here. I haven't written down my rankings, but like a high-end wide receiver 3 in fantasy, maybe like that kind of range, like a 25 kind of range.
Ricky Pearsall is probably going to be pushing for that same kind of thing. He ended the season hot, though.
Well, that's the thing is, you kind of have to call it a wash for a man who was shot in the fucking chest weeks before the season started.
Getting shot will definitely be a holdup to the start of your career. That is for sure.
There's been too many guys getting shot.
Yeah,
Brian Robinson, Tank Dell, and like, I can't remember the last time that had happened.
It's definitely better. It's definitely better to not be shot than to be shot. I think that's the real takeaway here.
Was that like an Abe Lincoln quote or something?
No. All right, moving on. As we head into the offseason, it's important to keep track of these key offseason dates so we kind of know what's approaching, know what to preview, and you guys know, just these milestones that we can hit so we can not want to die with the absence of actual football.
And it's really only a month away until
it's really
the
not
activity
that bad.
really starts cooking. It's not bad at all.
I learned last year, and this is for me personally, maybe other people don't follow these sports as closely, but like for me, I realized last year there's only like 3 really quiet weeks, because it's like from now until, so the first date is March 4th. That's the franchise tag deadline. That one's not really that big. But for me, like now through the end of the college basketball season is a lot of fun. Like if you like college basketball, if you like March Madness, you should start watching games now so you can figure out who's good. And then March Madness hits. It's the best time of year. What? Why are you raising your hand?
Boogity, boogity, boogity. The Daytona
NASCAR.
500 is also Sunday, if anyone cares.
I don't think anyone
like,
cares.
See, I love it too because this is a great season for baseball too, where it's just like transactions galore for the next month and a half. So like this is my favorite. It's funny you think football ending would be like the misery, but this like next month and a half stretch is probably my favorite in all of the whole calendar.
Yeah, for me, maybe it's just because I'm a content creator, so it's like the stuff surrounding the draft occupies so much time, both the lead up and the fallout. But it's like, we've got free agency starts on March 12th. That's a content goldmine. That's always a fun thing to keep track of. That's right at the same time, basically, that March Madness really gets going. So we have those 2 things to look forward to for the next month. After that, like, again, we have March Madness playing out through early April. Then you have the NFL draft, which is right after that. And then you have the NBA draft, which I love, a couple months after that.
The dog days of baseball summer
It's really... Really early
baseball.
July.
Yeah.
It's really most of July that ends up being the driest. If you're not a big baseball fan,
because at least
but
in
even
August.
like moderate baseball fans, I feel like those still aren't super jazzed for like the middle of the season. Like beginning
that's the
hype,
thing, yeah.
Getting close to playoffs hype, but like games 50 through 100
like
can be tough.
I absolutely love baseball. Is my favorite sport by a lot, and even then, like those dog days get a little tough. But at least in August, you could start like edging to NFL stuff like coming up.
Exactly.
So like. Yeah, it really is only one.
Late
tough
July
one.
is when players start reporting to camp.
Yeah,
so.
and the good thing for you guys at least is in terms of March Madness, this will not be a UConn Glaze Fest for the third year in a row because it seems they are. If they win it again with this team, then
everyone's gonna murder us. Everyone will
build
be
the statue. But yeah, they're not gonna run train the way they did. So we'll actually talk about some other teams for once, and still get mad about UConn. So hang on. This is I said it last year.
Yep.
This Central Connecticut team,
oh my God,
is better than last year. They are up 2 games in the NEC. They are going to be the NEC #1 seed. This could be the first time since 2006 when they got absolutely bukkake by Greg Oden in the first round. This could be the time where Central Connecticut State is back in the tournament. And if they do, I hope they are nearby. Or even if they are in Dayton in the first 4, my country ass is buying a ticket. And I'm going.
Folks.
And the funniest thing is, I'm only going to be like a month removed from back surgery for the championship game. I'm storming the fucking court. I'll be the last one out there. They'll have to wheel me out on a fucking stretcher. But I'm storming. If they win that tournament, I will be standing on the court.
There will be
afterwards.
no storming.
And
you will be spritzing on the court. Maybe.
And you can book that.
I want to do a quick exercise here with the live chat. Folks, type 1 if this is the first instance you are ever hearing that Central Connecticut is a D1 team. I just want to see how many people even knew that before today. Type 1 if you've never heard of CCSU, Central Connecticut State, in your life. And let's just see what the people are saying. Lexi from downstairs is saying 1. The ones are filling up.
Oh, come on, Lex. Come on.
I love your dedication. I love your dedication.
Oh, somebody put -1.
Yeah.
When they are this year's St. Peter's, come back to me. Come back to me.
Okay, deal. If they are this year's St. Peter's, God, what can I threaten to do that won't get me canceled? We'll figure it out. I'll do something outrageous if Central.
Oh,
if
I'm
Central
gonna get butt naked if that happens.
If Central Connecticut, what did St. Peter's do? They made the Elite Eight.
I think they made
right?
like the Elite Eight. Yeah,
I think it was the Elite Eight. Yeah, we'll iron those details.
You've heard of Eastern and Western Connecticut? They're fucking D2 and D3.
Well, maybe because those are actual cardinal directions instead of just being central. We're just in the middle. Whatever.
Hey, Central Connecticut is a great area.
Back to the important
Connecticut
off-season
is a
dates.
gem.
Back to the important off-season dates that we just didn't mention. Again, we did mention this one. March 4th, franchise tag deadline. March 12th, free agency. I guess I did mention that one briefly. And then April 24th is the NFL draft. So those are the things we'll be leading up to. I don't even know right now off the top of my head who is like franchise tag candidates. I'm sure we'll start hearing that pop up because, again, that date's not far away. That is less than, it's about 3 weeks away. So we'll be starting to hear those rumblings as we approach that day. But yeah, March 12th, free agency, April 24th through the 26th, obviously, is the NFL draft. But the biggest offseason storylines, Pat, these are the things we'll be watching as we head to this offseason.
What to watch for? Cease and desist.
I should get that as a sound effect. Yeah, but we would probably get sued if we're not already getting
I know
sued
a guy.
by the
No.
Hey, me too.
I know a guy.
But the biggest offseason storylines surrounding, free agents, and I think these are the biggest ones right now. Number one, first and foremost, biggest priority, where will T. Higgins end up? We've made the joke before that every team is going to get T. Higgins because every fan base thinks they're going to get T. Higgins.
I put in our free agent list that he was going to be cloned 31 times.
Yes,
and
every
they were all
team
going to be
gets a
free
T.
agents.
Higgins. You get a T. Higgins and you get a T. Higgins.
Everybody gets a T.
Somehow the Dodgers are going to try to sign like 6 of the T. Higginses, and that's going to create a disparity. But we'll get to that when we get to it. Pat, out of the 32 T. Higgins clones, if we can't make that happen, where would we like to see the one T. Higgins end up? Where would you like to see T. Higgins end up?
If we're talking like, oh god, one of our friends is about to just absolutely cream himself. I think he would be really good as a Green Bay Packer. We even heard Josh Jacobs. First of all, Josh Jacobs saying they need a real number one receiver is insane because he's right.
I love it.
Right.
I love
but the fact that he's like, they've still got some talented wide receivers.
I saw Dontavian Wicks reply, and then I saw somebody reply to that. They were like, "Didn't Josh Jacobs read the Week 7 waiver wire article about Dontavian Wicks?" It's like, that's true. That article probably did say he was Julio Jones.
You look at what that offense did without a true number one, with how good Josh Jacobs was, and how fun, guys like Jaden Reed can be if they look in his direction. And what the fuck's the guy's name? Tucker Kraft. I almost said Musgrave. Yeah, Tucker Kraft.
And Musgrave's the other tight end.
Yeah, exactly. That's why my brain just
Tucker Carlson
melted. I'm sending us a cease and desist for that one. That's a team that is already really good. And you throw a player like T. Higgins in there, that could absolutely take them to the next level in what is going to be an insanely competitive NFC North, assuming the Vikings can maintain at least somewhat of what they did last year with J.J. McCarthy now.
Yeah, I think that's a good landing spot for him. I will not include the Patriots in this because that's just really easy. Obviously, we have $1 bajillion in cap space. We need real receivers. So I'll go a different direction than that just for the sake of the argument. Looking at cap space for this offseason, I don't know if they have enough, but I would really like to see him on the Panthers. I would really like to see Bryce Young get a guy like this because the Deontay Johnson experiment did not fucking work. I think Deontay Johnson is in a dumpster somewhere. So I would love to see Bryce Young with just how he came along at the end of the season. Excuse me. Get a real. I don't even know if T. Higgins can fairly be classified as a true alpha number one, but a guy who's closer to it than Xavier Legette and Jalen Coker and Adam Thielen. Those guys are all great depth receivers. I like all three of those guys.
To get a real guy like T. Higgins, And I thought about that, but that was one thing where it's is he gonna I wonder where he views the Panthers in terms of how close is this team gonna be to contending. Obviously they're in the right division to contend with the most mediocre division in the NFL on a yearly basis. So realistically, you don't have to be fantastic, but like, does he think adding himself into that equation with what else they still need to do defensively, can that get them to the point? Personally, I don't know if I think that's going to happen. And but I mean, I guess the money's going to talk. If they come with the money, then, you know, who's to say he just won't do that? I just, in terms of like an actual fit, I think that would be fun. I just don't see that as a super realistic location,
my other big
unfortunately.
Now that I think of actual best overall fits for just from every angle, really, looking at the teams with cap space, the Chargers. Put him on the opposite side of Ladd McConkey, or just on the field with Ladd McConkey. Yeah, I mean, look, Quentin had moments, but T. Higgins is like if Quentin Johnston's brain cells actually were connected all the time. Sometimes they just disconnect. I don't know. The electrical signal gets lost. And plus, the Chargers are used to having a deep threat receiver that's on the injury report all the fucking time. They just got rid of Mike Williams. So they're used to that aspect of it. But I think from a pure fit perspective, like, again, well, I could go down the list of teams with the most cap space. The Patriots, yes, makes sense, but not if T. Higgins wants to be on like an immediate.
Well, that's the thing. Similarly, like I think they're even further than the Panthers from contending, even with T. Higgins. So again, the fit is there. I just don't see unless they really throw some money at him going to a team like that.
Yeah. Then you got the Raiders, probably not. You got the Commanders. I mean, sure, but they are like receivers, not really their biggest need. Would I be upset about it? No, I would love to see Jaden Daniels just have all the weapons to play with. The Cardinals. The Cardinals is one that like low key makes sense, but I would just be mad about because I don't want that.
If they drafted Marvin Harrison that high to literally just get T. Higgins, what the fuck are you doing?
I mean, yeah, but like also the guys behind Marvin, I guess I shouldn't discredit what Michael Wilson did. He had a nice year, but I still feel like there's room for T theoretically.
Oh no, there is, but it's just like, why would you not want to make this guy the focal point? Obviously, we questioned that all year. It's
maybe
like,
they realized he's more of a Robin than a Batman.
Oh god, it's like, do you eat that L or do you even give him the chance? You got to give him the chance. Trey McBride's always going to be a huge piece of that offense, no matter what. But in theory, yes, there is plenty of room there, and you've got to talk about Kansas City. And Baltimore. Anytime there's a wide receiver, those are the two teams that come up the most. But I think we've seen that, like, they don't necessarily need an alpha male top dog wide receiver kind of deal here. Because even when the Chiefs had Tyreek, he obviously he was the alpha in terms of his production, but in terms of his play style, he wasn't, he was more of the run really fast and get wide open and run like a maniac, as opposed to Higgins, who's kind of going to, go and beat someone in a one-on-one jump ball kind of situation.
Considering
Kansas City and Baltimore always come up.
Considering the minimal cap space that the Chiefs have, obviously I don't ever rule anything out because you blink twice and there's a restructure that makes it work, but I think the Chiefs probably believe they have enough to not commit $30 million a year to T. Higgins with how Xavier Worthy came on at the end of the year, knowing they're going to get Rashee Rice back. They probably need some depth behind that, but like I think that's enough for a team that's built to win now and has to pay all these other guys to not want to commit $30 million to T. Higgins. Would T. Higgins help? Obviously, but you have to prioritize when you're a team like the Chiefs, and I think they need to worry about the trenches if the Super Bowl was any indication. Going as we continue down the cap space ladder, like the Chargers I just mentioned, they're after the Cardinals.
The Bears are in hell, man.
The Bears don't need him. The Vikings don't need him. The Niners don't need him. The Bengals.
Bengals obviously could use him.
The Bengals could use him. The Lions don't need him. They have J-Mo and Amon-Ra. The Titans are just not in a position to pay a guy like that. But then again, they paid Calvin Ridley last year, so who the fuck knows?
I'll tell you, this would just be such a wet fart for him to go back to Cincinnati. With all this hype, like this is, NFL free agency isn't. I mean, last year was crazy with all those great running backs going different places. You don't really see that as much as you would in the NBA or the MLB. So I think it's a real possibility that we're all just getting super excited for literally nothing.
It's the Brandon Ayuk situation all over again. Where is he going to go? Nowhere. But I think the teams we floated, Pat, Panthers, Chargers, and Packers, I think those are all pretty reasonable spots for each of their own reasons.
Yeah, for sure.
And so we'll see if he actually ends up going anywhere or not. The other biggest offseason storylines as far as free agents go, look, quarterback is king, and we've got two quarterbacks that I think a lot of people will be watching where they go. Sam Darnold and Justin Fields. Sam Darnold is going to get a starting gig somewhere, obviously, after this past season.
And
Justin Fields, we hope he will, based on there's a lot of quarterback openings, it seems like, and I think Justin Fields showed enough in the limited action with the Steelers for at least a down bad team to, want to experiment with him. Where would we like to see them end up? I think Sam Darnold is the interesting one, from a, they need to have a real system in place. I mean, realistically, both landing spots for these guys need to have good systems in place because neither one is going to just carry a franchise on their own. But Sam Darnold is the one that I think most people are looking at. Looking at the quarterback depth charts, where I would want to see him end up, I mean, a return to Minnesota is certainly a possibility. Yeah. I think if that weren't to happen, lately there have been some rumblings, some chatterings of Matthew Stafford and the Giants. And so I think we've talked about how Darnold could fit in a Rams system. I think that would make a lot of sense. I would not mind that at all. If the Rams wanted to go that direction and start looking toward the future, because, again, Darnold is only, I believe, 26 or 27 years old. Matthew Stafford is 37. So I think that's a great fit if that were how things played out.
The Raiders.
Otherwise,
they
Raiders
have the money.
Yeah,
and, I mean, I guess he has the Pete Carroll 10 years later USC connection. But
I guess, yeah.
But
was he the coach?
Not even close. No,
I was like
7 years apart.
I was like,
I think Carroll has been in Seattle.
Yeah,
since
Carroll.
Like
that was like prime Legion of Boom. Carroll.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Yeah,
Why'd I say that?
But yeah, you look at a team that needs a quarterback and has the money. Like I said earlier, I hope to God they don't do it. Another situation you look at is Pittsburgh. Should they decide to move on from both Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, which is very possible.
To make room for Rodgers.
Dear God,
maybe.
you're looking at another situation. Tennessee feels like the perfect place if they didn't have the number one pick. Like it just feels like he's a Titan for way too much money. But the fact that they have the number one pick and will presumably have Cam Ward takes away those kind of joys. And the Browns and Saints have no money.
I just pray he doesn't go to some janky ass team. I just want to see him succeed. I do. I don't want to hate too much.
Wait, the Jets. That was really high pitched. The Jets. Benny. The copyright strike again.
How about Pat? What if he went to the Jags?
Duval.
I just want
also
to say that.
you talked about Matthew Stafford to the Giants. Well, the Giants are also in hell.
Yeah, I just wanted to play. I mean,
so
Awards. And Justin Fields. Justin Fields deserves a. Justin Fields also needs at least an offensive line so that he can have something to create these rushing lanes for him. Does anyone have a decent offensive line but no quarterback? I feel like those two things don't generally go hand in hand.
The Panthers not. 8 weeks ago.
I mean, yeah. But yeah, I don't know where Fields.
The Colts.
Oh God, Anthony Richardson if he was good. Let's see. Yeah, Fields is a tough one to put my finger on. I feel like Fields is kind of just destined to go somewhere that isn't an ideal situation, like the Saints.
He will be cheap. Well, that's the thing is he will be cheap. So a team that's a little strapped, like the Saints, or even the Browns, if they don't want to go with Jameis or godforsaken Dorian Thompson-Robinson.
If they will not go with
he should be cheap enough to where he's not going to cost Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers or Sam Darnold money.
Yeah, so that'll be a fun one to watch because Justin Fields, especially from a fantasy perspective, Pat, we know what he can bring if he is actually the guy in a place just because of how well he can run the ball. Some other fantasy relevant free agents just that we're keeping an eye on just to get you guys primed for this offseason when free agency hits. Running back, there's Aaron Jones, Najee Harris, Nick Chubb, Javonte Williams, J.K. Dobbins. I didn't realize this one, Pat. Rico Dowdle. That'll be an interesting one after the solid year he just had. Kareem Hunt, and then we have restricted free agents in Jaylen Warren and Jordan Mason. At receiver, we have Stephon Diggs, Keenan Allen, Chris Godwin, Amari Cooper, DeAndre Hopkins, Hollywood Brown, Brandon Cooks, Deontay Johnson, if somebody can fish him out of the dumpster that he's in, Mike Williams, and Darius Slayton.
This would have gone so hard 5 years ago.
Nasty. And then at tight end's pretty janky. Zach Ertz is probably the most productive one. I assume he will just stay with the Commanders based on this past year.
And then Mike with Cliff Kingsbury,
Mike Gesicki, Tyler Conklin, and Juwan Johnson. So the
tight end class, guys who can We saw it with John Smith.
Guys,
some
they
of these
exist.
Throwaway fantasy tight end signings could turn into something.
Look, everything is situation, that's for sure. I think next week we'll probably dedicate to kind of a full free agent preview, kind of break down some of these guys and see where they should end up beyond just, the T. Higgins, Sam Darnold, and Justin Fields destinations. We'll dive a little deeper into it. But before we end the show, Pat, NFL award reactions, because we gave our predictions we gave our picks for the awards last week, and most of them, I think, went according to plan.
Yeah.
MVP did not. MVP was a bit of a surprise. I obviously was happy as I picked Allen to win, but I picked him because he was my pick. I fully acknowledge that I thought Lamar was going to win that.
Like I said, I'm not upset about Allen winning. Allen had a very MVP-worthy season. I just personally would have picked Lamar. But again, you're talking about a very close 1A, 1B kind of situation. So I'm not mad about that. I'm shocked that that's how it turned out. And the only other one, Ben Johnson winning Assistant of the Year is lame.
Yeah, it felt very vanilla.
Like you picked Vic Fangio, I picked Brian Flores. Those would have been two more way-inspired Assistant Coach of the Year picks. But besides that, everything kind of went according to plan.
Yeah, O'Connell won Head Coach of the Year. Surtain won Defensive Player of the Year. Offensive was Saquon. Defensive Rookie of the Year was Jared Verse. Offensive Rookie of the Year was obviously Jaden Daniels. Did see a couple of voters did put Bowers in there, which I liked because that was my pick for that. But yeah, the Allen thing, I know awards are such a hot topic and people love talking about them and they make great content for me when I decide to make videos about them, but I just fucking hate them. I hate the logic. I hate that the voters don't seem to take it seriously. There was some motherfucker put Lamar Jackson 4th on his ballot.
Was it Orlovsky?
I don't know. I think it was the same guy that didn't vote Ichiro for the Hall of Fame.
Here we go.
It's just, what the fuck are we doing? It does not make any logical sense to have a guy be the first team All-Pro and not the MVP. And I don't want to hear the arguments about, first team All-Pro is about, who was the best statistically, but then MVP is the place where we nuance it more. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah, valuable is the most subjective word there can be.
And I swear to God, they use that word for a reason. They use that word to intentionally be vague and allow just whatever narrative. There's no world, I don't care what anybody says, where the first team All-Pro shouldn't be the MVP if it's the same motherfuckers voting on both things. It's just silly. If you're trying to say that one thing has one set of requirements or qualifications and the other has the other, you're just being
and that's the thing,
dense for no reason.
In football, they don't have the kind of war. I mean, I'm sure they have some kind of equivalent of war, but it's not as developed.
Pro Football Reference does they do
more of a ranking
value.
As opposed to war, where obviously it's flawed, but it produces a number where you could say who was the most valuable player this year. War, in theory, would give you your answer in MLB. NFL, it's it just opens the door way more for these the narrative.
The narrative. Yeah, I'm looking up. Pro Football Reference's approximate value leaders 2025. This is not a metric that the NFL seems to use, but Lamar Jackson just above Josh Allen. He has, I don't know what these numbers mean. Lamar Jackson has 21. Josh Allen has 20. Jaden Daniels also has 20, so I think that makes sense. Then Zach Bond has 18, which I love. So I'm already a big fan of this. Penei Sewell
That's another
also
thing
has 18.
To add about the Eagles. How cool is that to see some of those guys? To see DEI hire Cooper DeJean and Zach Bond, who they were. It was cool. They pointed out on the broadcast, 1 year deal. Kind of just
Howie
Roseman's
a fucking demon, bro.
For him to be as good as he was on a defense that was as good as it was to win the Super Bowl, good for that guy.
It's gonna be,
and he's gonna get paid.
It's gonna be even cooler when I buy a Zach Bond jersey for the Patriots here in about 3 months. Anyway, no L. Zach Bond will love New England. The weather's beautiful. Sometimes. Anyway,
it's going to snow the next 3 nights here, but not during the day.
Don't tell Zach that. That'll do it for this episode of Brand Coverage, folks. Again, we'll be back next week with a deeper free agent breakdown.
I may not be back next week. I hope I'm back next week.
What are you guys? Is this your?
I'm having my annual back surgery on Monday.
Could be a Brand solo pod.
Deja vu, everybody. Last year I laid in bed. This year I'm planning to get way more whacked. than I was. I didn't manage my pain great last time, so I could also just come on and just be absolutely zooted. We'll see. I kind of talk nonsense anyway, but hopefully I'm here. Hopefully I'm here with you guys. But there will be a podcast.
We'll see. There's a chance. If I'm flying solo, that's all right. We just want our boy Pat.
I'll be in the chat if that's the case.
That's fair. Either way, free agent preview next week, and then we will again figure out whatever other topics we want to go over as the season here, is over. As sad as it is. So again, drop your suggestions for segments, topics you want us to cover throughout the offseason. We will be taking a look at those and certainly considering them. But for this week, for Pat Gustafson, I am Brandon Carney, and we will see you guys next time.
Stream still here by Darkside and on Spotify and Apple Music. Bye-bye.
All right, and we will answer your questions now for anybody still in the chat. Also, Pat, I saw you post that song. Pat just plugged a song that he worked on. I actually listen to that song now. Like, I enjoy that song.
Oh, do you really?
Fuck yeah. So nice job, because I listened to that. I was like, let me give my boy Pat a little support here. And I was like, here's the thing.
With this. If we use that on the podcast, we're not getting copyright stricken. No,
that's
true. What if I just copyright strike this?
Pat copyright strikes our
I don't believe
podcast.
I have that kind of authority to do that.
I think that would just be more logistically annoying than it's worth for you to figure out how to do that. But we will answer you guys' questions first. We'll get to the ones that were dono questions throughout the show. As we do, we always answer the super chat questions at the end. First one we got in here was Rolling Tide Pod. I love that username. Cry Swifties Cry with the $5 donation. Absolutely. Thank God. Just thank God. Scott Lumley with
She didn't look as good as Donna Kelsey, though.
True. Scott Lumley with Canadian $10, I think. I said, I, for one, welcome our new Eagle overlords. Also, did you see Gronk in the suit? That was Gronk, right? They didn't shave a gorilla and give him some cue cards. Why are we shading Gronk so much?
What?
Gronk's been in a suit like all year. He's been an analyst all season. God, that's toxic. But I also welcome our Eagle overlords. I'll be sick of it if they win another one, but like for now, definitely happy about it. Alex, our loyal listener with $4.99 said, this is for making the Bengals a Super Bowl pick. They just got to retain Hendrickson too. Also, describe each of your team's season in one word. Thanks, fellas. Oh boy, describe the Patriots season in one word. I'm trying to just think of a more creative word than just disaster.
See, I've got a good one.
Can I hyphenate and just say work in progress? I want to be somewhat optimistic. I'll say work in progress for now. Pat, what's the Raiders in one word?
Shart. Because they didn't full out shit their pants, but they still sharded, and they still got a big old problem on their hands. They still got a little bit of a stinky in their pants. And you've got to either go home from work or call your parents to bring you some clothes at school. The Raiders just basically sharded.
That's fair. As a bonus, I'll describe the Jags season in one word. Duval.
Come on.
Let's see. Time. Knight the Mite with $5 said, now with Rodgers gone, who should the Jets get? Can't really trade up and the free agents aren't appealing. My vote is Fields since he wasn't terrible. Yeah, this is a piece of the fallout of them reportedly moving on from Rodgers that we didn't really talk about during the show. Yeah, they're not in a position in the draft to get a quarterback. Fields is an interesting one. It's tough to gauge who the right fit is because obviously completely new regime. They haven't been able to make even a singular move yet to, surround the quarterback, whoever that may be, with anything. I think not Darnold is my first instinct because I just don't think there's a way for them to build enough to create a soft enough landing to make him work. I don't mind Fields. Pat, I'm interested to see if and what Jordan Travis has, if anything, because he's the guy they drafted, a couple years ago, had a really nice year with Florida State before the injury that, created the controversy of should they make the playoff or not, and then they didn't. He's a guy that they have on the roster, so maybe he's the answer.
We talked about wanting the new direction, and like a guy like Russell Wilson just kind of feels like Aaron Rodgers. What's the meme where like Aaron Rodgers but in red, like just the pie chart, like
yeah.
If you're really trying to start anew, Russell Wilson doesn't feel like the guy. I think I feel like, as Knight the Mite pointed out here, that Fields would probably be the best answer to that in terms of potentially a guy you could build around.
Mm. Yeah, I don't know who else they would go after. I mean, maybe it's somebody they try to trade for. Hey, we could offer you one shiny Joe Milton. All it'll cost you is a first-round pick. That's all we ask.
Gardner Minshew.
Why is he just always the bridge quarterback, and the bridge is always creaky and unsafe?
They poach Hendon Hooker and bring him in.
I mean, hey, Lions connection. There could be more shocking maneuvers. I will say that much. Lucian with $5 said, "Y'all hear about the Titans possibly trading the number 1 pick? It's a dumb idea if you ask me."
In theory, yes, but like,
I don't think
here's
it's
the thing: is it might just not be a great idea because it's still the first pick in the draft. You're still gonna get a lot, but like, we're not talking like when the Panthers traded up for Bryce Young, where Bryce Young was kind of the sure thing number 1 pick, and they traded a boatload away. Cam Ward may not be that guy, but if you're the Titans and you don't believe that Cam Ward is going to take your lost franchise into the future, don't pick him. Just because that there's a quarterback there. And honestly, if you don't pick him, I would rather trade out than draft like Abdul Carter or anybody else, other people's names that I don't know right now. But I think if you don't want one of the quarterbacks, you do need to get out. But it's like, what do? You can't go with Connecticut native Will Levis anymore. You can't do it. No. And like I said, that would just be the most Titans move ever, to trade out of their first pick and then just dump the fucking boat at Sam Darnold.
I know it would be.
But at the end of the day, if I had to make the prediction, I do think they stay at 1 and they draft Cam Ward.
I would agree. I think they need a quarterback bad enough that they will do that. But the reason I won't say it's a dumb idea is because this is not a quarterback class, the level that we've seen, in the last couple seasons, with 2022 notwithstanding, with Pickett and whatever the fuck. I mean, Super Bowl.
Yeah, the last 2 years it was like Young and then Caleb, and even some of the guys after him, like Stroud and Daniels and May. It's like, yep,
right.
Those are guys that you're gonna. These two, it's kind of like. Well, it's like, it could happen.
Yeah. That's why, for me, I won't call it a dumb idea because it fully depends on what they're being offered. Like, if some team comes to them, falls in love with Cam Ward or Shador and is like, we'll give you 3 future firsts, deal. Done deal.
I would say that, like, that it feels kind of like very Jared Goff-like in terms of the pre-draft lead-up, where everyone was kind of just like, okay, like, yeah, this guy seems decent. And granted, Jared Goff has turned out to be a really good player, and he helped net the Rams, the quarterback that led them to a Super Bowl victory, and he did lead them to a Super Bowl, but it just kind of feels that where it's like, not a super heralded guy, and obviously, and he's from Miami. It's not like he played at fucking North Dakota State, but, not from one of these blue blood Alabama's type schools. And, like, yeah, it just... I'm a little underwhelmed, but again, I just don't think I'm as informed as I need to be on Cam Ward and Shador Sanders.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty well consensus at this point that they would, if either of them were in, last year's quarterback class, they probably would have been QB 5 or 6 at best. So I think that's kind of just the reality we're looking at right now. But scouting is, as always, a imperfect science. So maybe one of them works out, and the Titans needing a quarterback so bad, it certainly would not be a bad idea, even if the guy flames out, like that would suck, to take their stab at a quarterback while they have the number 1 pick, because there's no guarantee they get back here. And I'm sure they're hoping they aren't back here next year. Braden with 199 says, "Is there a world where Hurts passes Burrow?" I don't think so.
I don't.
It would have to require some really out of character like improvement from Hurts or decline from Burrow due to a wrist injury or something. Talent wise, Burrow's he's different.
I saw somebody in the chat earlier compare him to, like, this generation's Dan Marino, Burrow, in that sense where it's like, he may not win the championship, but like, if he keeps throwing up these stats that he's been putting up when he's healthy, it doesn't fucking matter in terms of, like, he's still going to be viewed as like that next guy right there knocking on the door to elite, even if he may not have the accolades. Like, Burrow would need to, knock on wood, get hurt again. And, something would need to happen to make the play decline. As it is, I think Burrow, even if Hurts wins 2 more Super Bowls, I just think Burrow is going to be that good statistically that it's just too hard to do.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, anybody in the regular chat, we will answer some questions now that we are done with
our super
chats. Saw a good one.
From Bailey. From Bailey, who, a loyal listener here. Did y'all see the Aaron Rodgers McAfee news thing Rossini dropped? Oh, God, the chat went away. Oh, God.
I popped it up.
Oh, you pulled it up on the screen? All right. Yep. Rossini dropped saying Glenn told Rodgers to stop doing that. Thoughts on that? Good. Yeah. If you're Aaron Glenn, you want your quarterback to be focused on one thing and one thing only, and that is football. Because Aaron Rodgers isn't going on McAfee to hype up the fucking Jets. He's going to talk about the newest horse paste he shoved up his ass, or just to spew absolute nonsense. And, maybe that was part of the decision why they kind of wanted to, because I'm sure Rodgers said no. I don't know if that was in the report. I haven't seen this report. But, you'd assume Rodgers said no because, again, of how self-absorbed the guy is. So I believe that that's true. And good for Aaron Glenn. Good for him.
It's part of the culture. Team now. It's part of the culture setting. I have no issue with it. You obviously don't want your head coach to be, controlling every aspect of what these grown men do outside of their football lives. But I think appearing regularly on one of the most watched shows in the world and constantly drawing attention to yourself on that show, regardless of what you're saying on it, is a reasonable thing for a coach to be like, we're not doing this. That's a reasonable thing to say, let's tone that down. And I don't think that's over controlling or anything.
If he's going on there and talking about the X's and O's and talking about the Jets, talking about their game plan, talking about this, and I know they do talk about that, but that's not what he's mainly going on there to.
No, he goes on there to say fuck Fauci, and then I'm smoking the green bean or whatever. That
that's the thing is every week he's on, the takeaway from that segment has almost nothing to do with his performance on the field.
Yeah. Let's see. Stone says, "Hey, Bran, I'm back from 2 streams ago. Couldn't make it last time. Hear me out. Taylor Swift dumps the old and washed Travis Kelce and begins dating the young, handsome Cooper DeJean. Thoughts?" I mean, that'd be very funny. That'd be very funny. However, no, because I don't want another connection for Taylor Swift to continue to be on the screen if Travis Kelce were to retire. I don't need her dating one of the youngest players in football so that this fuckery continues. I'm good.
Surely this fuckery won't continue.
Surely.
How old is Taylor Swift anyway? She's got to be 35. I did not think she was that old. I thought she was closer to our age.
Closer to our age. She's been relevant since we were in 6th grade. How could she be closer to our age?
Yeah, but I thought she was in 6th grade too at the time. I don't know. I don't know.
Let's see. What do we want to answer?
A lot of Travis Kelce retiring questions.
Do you think,
I don't think so.
Kelce's going to retire? I would be surprised if he went out like this, knowing that this is a team that just made or won the prior 2 Super Bowls and made another one. I think even if he comes back one more year and loses again, that's at least okay. I gave it one more shot to redeem myself. He'd be okay with that. I can't imagine him being okay with this.
And he did seem a good bit washed this year, but I still think there's something in the tank where he can at least be a valuable piece to what will still be a really good offense with Rashee Rice and hopefully a full season of Isaiah Pacheco. This is still going to be a really good team next year.
100%. What do you think is the best wide receiver college, LSU or Ohio State? It's LSU right now, and it's not close. LSU
1 and 2 effectively.
Bro, after next, there is a very realistic world where after next season, we are saying the top 4 receivers in football are all from LSU. If Neighbors and Thomas put together
who's the 4th guy we're talking about?
Any sort of improvement on what they just did this past season, along with Chase and Jefferson kind of concrete locked in 1 and 2, it's LSU. I mean, Ohio State's a great school, and they've
got the depth. They've got the depth for sure.
And they will continue to be I think Emeka Egbuka's coming out this year, and he is a guy that I think is a little underrated heading into the draft because I felt like he was talked about so much as this consensus top guy, and then this past year just kind of fell off of that. And then whenever the fuck Jeremiah Smith comes out, he's a true freshman, and people were saying if he was eligible,
people are already talking about
if Jeremiah Smith was eligible to come out this year as a freshman, people are saying he would have been the number 1 overall pick. So Ohio State's gonna be able to make a closer argument. I think right now it's not a close argument.
I think the fact that number 1 and 2 in such a stacked group of wide receivers throughout the NFL, the wide receiver talent in the league is immense. And for 1 and 2 to be from the same place, they've got to be wide receiver U right now.
Yeah. Bailey said, remember when I said BTJ would have a better year than Neighbors? I'm surprised I was right. I don't remember that, but I believe you, and good fucking call there, because that is, I don't think a lot of people said that. Although, I mean, we knew he was going to
BTJ at all, so.
No, I mean, we knew BTJ had at least the better quarterback, but we also didn't realize that most of his production was going to come with Mac Jones, so that point was kind of moot anyway. We'll do, let's say, 2 more here. Kyle says, do you think Jalen Coker could be a good fantasy pick if they move him up to wide receiver 2 next year? Yeah, I mean, there's a world,
someone worth drafting.
There's a world where he proves to be better than Xavier Legette. I think that's possible. It's in the realm of possibilities. I'm assuming they're going to sign somebody because knowing that the Deontay Johnson thing was a failure, whether it's T. Higgins or otherwise, I think they'll bring in somebody. So I think it's possible that he's a 2. And yeah, I mean, look, he had spurts of like not fantasy relevant enough that you were picking him up because you didn't know when the games were going to happen. But he had like a couple boom games this year, so it wouldn't surprise me.
In knowing now that that offensive line was as good as it was, and we saw that glimmer of potential from Bryce Young, you'd think the team will want to capitalize on that and go and get. It may not be T. Higgins, but maybe like a Chris Godwin or someone like that, someone else that's kind of going to keep him out. But at least as of right now, I think he's one of the guys like at the end, 13th, 14th-ish round, just throw it out there because it is possible.
Be a dart. He'll be a dart. Nobody's going to be valuing him too high to where you probably have to reach on him before, the double-digit rounds. All right, I think that will do it. I think we got through a lot of good questions here. Again, folks, we'll be back here, or at least I will be. Pat might be. We'll see how he's feeling next week. But free agent stuff and other stuff as we approach next week and, kind of just drown in the sad offseason. We'll probably talk about some college basketball stuff coming up pretty soon, too.
Boogity.
And NASCAR. We will have a 3-hour-long NASCAR. I'm kidding.
Pat's weekly NASCAR gambling segment.
But, folks, thank you for tuning in once again. For Pat Gustafson, I am Brandon Carney, and we will see you guys next time.